Welcome to Europe's spaceport here in French Guiana and to your front row seat for the launch of the Jupiter Icy Moons Explorer on an Ariane 5 rocket.
Our rocket is here on the launch pad with the JUICE spacecraft on top, ready to begin its journey.
Over the next couple of hours, we will bring you live coverage of launch operations directly from here,
The Jupiter Control Center.
And from here, ESA's mission control at the European Space Operations Center in Germany.
So this is where we're getting the first signals from the spacecraft after launch and confirmation that the solar panels have deployed. We'll be discussing exactly what makes this spacecraft so special. I'm Matt Russell.
I'm Bruno Souza.
I'm Raphael Chevrier.
And I'm Lisa Peterson, and welcome to flight VA260 on the first leg of JUICE's journey into space. Following yesterday's postponement due to bad weather, Ariane 5 is now ready for launch here at Europe's spaceport in French Guiana. With her single passenger, the Jupiter Icy Moons Explorer, JUICE, safe and sound under the fairing. Liftoff is scheduled in just under half an hour. I'm right here in the aptly named Jupiter Mission Control Room. This is the nerve center of today's mission, and you can see here on the other side of this protective glass, which we call the fishbowl here in Kourou, you can see the teams working hard on the last preparations towards today's mission. Opposite me here, we have the partners, VIPs and guests all comfortably seated and waiting for liftoff. And with me right here for an update, we have Stéphane Israël, CEO of Arianespace. Welcome, Stéphane.
Good morning, please.
Thank you very much. So we're back here together. So can you first of all maybe tell me, 24-hour delay, what was the reason for this delay yesterday?
So very simple. The launcher was ready, JUICE was ready, the launch was ready, but the weather was not with us. You know, we have to monitor two risks. High altitude winds, and it was okay, but risk of lightning yesterday was a real risk with the cloud to monitor, and so we have made the decision not to lift off yesterday.
But of course, as we always say, better be safe than sorry. JUICE can absolutely afford to wait another day under the fairing, not a problem.
Yes, for sure, because you know that once we will have done our job after 27 minutes and once we will have orbited JUICE on an escape orbit, then it will be the start of an 8-year journey. So one day is nothing as compared to what we have ahead of us. We will monitor the weather now in the final minutes. The teams have worked all night. All is red up to now, so we are now... All is green up to now, sorry.
And we can see it on the status board, and we get some clapping here from the crowd.
It's a part of emotion for such an important mission.
It's going to bring us very good luck.
Yes,
absolutely.
all is green. And so at 9:14, we will lift off.
At 9:14, we'll lift off. Thank you so much, Stéphane, and fingers crossed, good luck for today. And we'll see you later. Thank you so much, Stéphane. And Stéphane is getting a round of applause in here in Jupiter. Of course, an emotion which is easy to understand, obviously, considering the conditions of yesterday's delay. But everything is fine, safe and sound under the fairing, as we said. So, as the teams working here in Jupiter Control, more than 7,000 kilometers away over the Atlantic at ESA's Mission Control Center in Darmstadt, Germany, we have the teams there who will take over control of the aircraft once it separates from the mothership. And we're going to go straight over and speak to them and hear how things are looking over there in Darmstadt. Over to you, Matt.
Thank you, Lisa, and hello to all our watchers. Welcome to ESOC, the European Space Operations Center, here in Darmstadt, Germany, in the heart of Mission Control. I am. My name is Matt Russell, and I will be your host for the second half of this JUICE broadcast. And behind, we have Bruno Souza in the actual control room itself. So, hello, Bruno. Try and give us an update of what's happening in there at the moment.
Hi, Matt. We're still getting goosebumps all day, although to this time a bit more cautious goosebumps. But we are ready to go. And in fact, just a few minutes ago, the flight director, Andrea Komatsu, just did the roll call and got to go from everybody here in the room. We have some footage of that, and we're going to replay it for you.
To all stations, this is OD on the briefing loop for the roll call. Please reply on my call with your call sign and your status go, no go. OM.
OM.
Go. Some.
Some go.
Data handling.
And data handling go.
AOCS.
AOCS go.
Platform.
Platform go.
Flight dynamics.
Flight dynamics go.
Project rep.
Project rep go.
Project support.
Project support go.
Softcode.
Softcode go.
Software support.
Software support go.
S-track.
Extra go.
Scheduling.
Scheduling go.
Thanks. This completes the roll call for the JUICE mission. We are go for launch.
So as you just saw, we are fully ready to go. We're just waiting for that rocket to get off the launch pad.
Thanks so much, Bruno. Well, we're running out of time here, so we're back over to you, Lisa, in Kourou, and massive good luck to you.
Thank you from the teams in Darmstadt. And hey, the pressure's on. They said all we're waiting for is that rocket to take off. Well, they've told us they're ready. The rocket is ready, but we want to know about JUICE. And we have Mihaela Barbu from ESA who's here to tell us all about it. Mihaela, how ready is JUICE?
Good morning. JUICE is actually ready and excited to start this journey. As we speak, my colleagues are closely monitoring the satellite. So yesterday, after the launch postponement, the satellite was switched off. And slowly in the day, around 7:14 p.m., it has been turned on to start the countdown procedure. They are very close to us, a few kilometers away in LBC control room, and everyone is hoping for good weather specs.
Fantastic. So we have a bit of time to chat about this. So your job is schedule controller. Does that mean that you're in charge of making sure all goes to plan?
It's part of my responsibility, but you know, when it comes to scheduling, it's never one single person's job. It's actually a team exercise because planning means working coherently as a team. And us, the JUICE project team, we are quite schedule-oriented. We have a strong planning mindset. And even if you have the most perfect plan, you always have risk, you have uncertainty. And we saw that yesterday. So imagine if you take a step back, us in JUICE, we had to run our AIT campaign through a pandemic. And if you think of the industrial consortium, more than 2,000 people worked on this program, 23 countries, 18 institutions, 83 companies, then you understand the complexity of project management that my colleagues and I have been performed on this mission.
And done a fantastic job so far. So this is a personal journey for you. It's 8 years, your entire professional life, because you're just a baby. So tell us how you're feeling today.
I'm very excited, and yes, JUICE is my entire career in ESA. And yesterday, as the project team, we received so much positive energy from home, from our science project. Thank you so much for your wishes. Everyone in ESTEC, we saw you how many were there. Thank you for your support. ESOC, ESAC, the people on the spaceport, we managed to see our extended JUICE family, our instrument colleagues, and we spoke with them. So they gave us all the energy to go through the night and to keep JUICE ready for the launch today.
Thank you so much. Have you got a last word before we leave it here?
I wish everyone to enjoy the launch from all the teams who have worked on this amazing journey. As European, I'm exceptionally proud to be part of it. And let's enjoy the event of today. It's well-deserved. Absolutely
well-deserved for your teams and, of course, all the other teams that you mentioned that have been working on this project. Thank you so much, Mihaela. Thank you. So as Mihaela was saying, a huge amount of work from teams all over the world. We're going to find out more about these teams' achievements and, of course, about JUICE in the next film.
Jupiter, the largest planet in the solar system, is a place that holds many secrets. This fascinating gas giant planet and its intriguing moons have raised more questions than answers. Today, these answers are in ESA's grasp, with the very first European mission to Jupiter, JUICE. Short for Jupiter Icy Moons Explorer, this spacecraft will explore Jupiter and 3 of its icy moons, Callisto, Europa, and in particular Ganymede. Developed and built by Airbus, JUICE's spacecraft is equipped with 10 top-of-the-line science instruments to explore the Jovian system and investigate whether some of its many environments may be suitable for the formation of life. This grand odyssey of exploration begins with the launch of JUICE on an Ariane 5 rocket from Europe's spaceport in Kourou, an historical mission aiming at solving key mysteries such as the possibility of life in the Jovian system, Ganymede's magnetic field, and last but not least, the formation of Jupiter and its moons. JUICE will also study Jupiter's complex weather, chemistry, and climate in detail.
It's a very fantastic mission from the scientific point of view. Very broad science, very interdisciplinary science. We would like to see whether around Jupiter there are places where life could have started. To explore that, we need to find a place with internal energy and with liquid water. And inside the icy moons, we have good reason to believe that there is in fact more liquid water there inside the surface than on Earth.
JUICE is expected to arrive at Jupiter in 2031 and will then make its Jupiter tour and moon's flybys before orbiting Ganymede. This will be the first time a spacecraft orbits any moon other than our own. During its journey, JUICE will face many dangers such as Jupiter's intense radiation belts or its large gravitational pull, but these dangers will be worth it for the science that JUICE will uncover. The gas giant will reveal some of its many secrets in 2032 when the first data will be available. Watch this space.
So speaking of space exploration, we have two of the faces of human space exploration with us here today. I'm delighted to welcome once again Thomas Pesquet and Matthias Maurer. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for being with us again today. It's a pleasure. So we're seeing JUICE go up into space with these outstanding instruments. What is it about sending this kind of instrument, going out to space yourselves, that helps us back here on Earth? First question to you.
Yeah, I think space exploration really in space ticks all the boxes. You get all the short-term benefits, you know, the things that we all use, that we all have in our smartphones, the navigation, the weather report. And then you have the more medium-term, I would say, applications. The reason we know today about climate change, the reason we're in position to fight climate change is thanks to all the missions we send around the Earth and observing the Earth. So that's kind of the more medium terms. Space agencies are the champions of fighting against climate change. And then you have the longer term, the far-reaching benefits for the future. And that's the research and the exploration we're doing, the research on board the space station, building better materials, you know, better medicine, better treatments. And it all diffuses in society on Earth, and it's going to make the progress, you know, go up one step at a time. And then those missions going far out into the solar system, it's really to look at ourselves, our place in the universe, how do planets form, where do we come from, where are we going? Those are very important questions, and those are the type of questions that we're trying to solve with those missions.
Fantastic. Well, we're talking about JUICE today that's about to lift off and go on its mission, a long, long journey. But what about human space exploration? What are the next destinations?
Well, I think the next destination is very much the moon. I mean, the next big thing in space exploration, human space exploration, is the Artemis program. ESA has a big part to play in the Artemis program. We're providing the European service module to the Orion capsule. And that means one day we'll see European astronauts around the moon, on the moon. And so to prepare for this, we also have our robotic moon exploration. And then what we learn on the moon will put us in a position one day to go to Mars. And Mars is the twin sister of the Earth. That's where we learn a lot on ourselves. It had similar conditions. It has lost its atmosphere. Liquid water also has disappeared. Can it happen to us? You know, those are important questions. And that's why we'll go to Mars first with our probes, with our orbiters, and then one day with human exploration to Mars. That's the big prize money, the big goal, the big step.
Fantastic. Wow. It makes you dream. But of course, what I would like to know from you, Matthias, is are you guys getting ready to take part in these adventures?
Yes, so Thomas and I, we already flew to low Earth orbit, and flying to the moon, we need to learn more, because on the moon you need geologists. So we need to go out in the field and learn how to talk with the geologist, how to be the hands and the eyes of the geologist once we're on the surface of the moon. And ESA already started this training for European astronauts some years ago. And so we see continuously European astronauts going out into the field, learning all these skills. But we also need to develop facilities where we can train European astronauts what to do on the moon. And so in Cologne, we will now have the moon training facility, which will enable to do all this training over there. And it will be so good that even hopefully the NASA astronauts will come over to train there, for their Artemis mission. So that's the big vision that we have. But it's not only learning for the moon. We also should also keep in focus that we have European astronauts flying to the ISS. Andy Mogensen is getting ready to fly later this year. And we just started a new astronaut class They will be flying to the ISS, hopefully, and to whatever comes after the ISS.
So, do you imagine yourself taking off from here from the European spaceport here in French Guiana one day, Matthias?
Yes, we are currently in times that are really like a revolution in space. And so Europe needs to step up, and one of the big missions that we have, we need to become sovereign, to become autonomous, also with access to space for Europeans from European soil. And I think French Guiana is the ideal place to send Europeans on a European rocket in a European capsule to space. It's our big dream. Thomas and I, we would love to fly together from here to low Earth orbit, but maybe even also in a European rocket further towards the moon.
And you said you'd be happy to welcome your NASA friends as well.
Absolutely. I mean, it's like we should not forget spaceflight is also a soft diplomacy power. And we will see very soon that China will invite foreign astronauts to fly to their space station. And so we Europeans, we are just learning that in these times it becomes more and more important to be on level field playing. And spaceflight definitely is also an important part in the diplomacy area.
Huge thank you, Matthias. And we have with us Josef Aschbacher. You are the Director General of ESA. Thank you for joining us. So in a nutshell here, what we've been talking about is Europe's capabilities for independent launch. Are you going to make this happen? You have 15 seconds.
It's not for me to make it happen. It's all the others to make it happen. But certainly we have been working very hard on it. We have consulted experts, independent experts, to help us, giving advice what this would mean for Europe as a unity of all the countries, the inspiration we would give, the economic benefits, the geopolitical strength that would be portrayed through such an activity. So there's a lot of interesting facets, and you have just heard Matthias and Thomas talking about those because it's so important, and yes, we are working on it. But let's talk about JUICE because that's why we're here. Also another excellence where Europe is really good, and let's look how our satellites and our launches are doing.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. Huge thank you.
Thank you.
And to talk about JUICE, I am joined by Raphaël Chevrier from Arianespace. Raphaël is going to take us step by step all the way through every step of the mission. Raphaël?
Hello, Liz.
Hello. Welcome to Road to Space, and I'm going to let you take over from here and tell us what the next steps are.
Yes, so this morning we are launching towards the east, where we benefit from the slingshot effect given by the rotation of the Earth. So the launcher performs a first pitch maneuver in order to get us into the right direction. And only 2 minutes and 17 seconds after liftoff, the two boosters have done their jobs of providing the main thrust, so we don't need them anymore, they are detached from the launcher. Shortly after that, the fairing, which protected the spacecraft from the environment of the launch, is also jettisoned as we have crossed the limits of the atmosphere. Once the launcher reaches an intermediate orbit, the main stage is cut off and separated. So then the upper stage takes over, which engine is going to power for about 16 minutes in order to raise speed and altitude and release JUICE on the targeted orbit. So, by the way, the little towers that you see on the motion picture, they represent a chain of telemetry stations that are receiving data from the Ariane 5 in real time all along the flight path. After some orientation maneuvers, JUICE is separated on a liberations orbit. It means that it will have the required speed to escape literally the gravitational pull of the Earth. Then this is almost the end of the mission from the launcher, as we still need to perform some disposal maneuvers of the upper stage, but JUICE is only beginning its journey. ESA teams will use the Norcia ground telemetry stations in Australia to acquire the signal from the spacecraft and take full control of it. 1 hour and a half after liftoff, Joule will start deploying itself like a butterfly into space. First, it will unfold the large solar panels. Their total surface is 85 square meters. This is definitely bigger than my Parisian apartment. And then, in the following days, it will deploy its many antennas and probes. So the animation here doesn't depict the increasing altitude that JUICE is going to get, getting farther and farther from Earth. on its way to its 8-year journey to Jupiter.
Thank you so much, Raphael. It's all very clear. And actually, as Raphael was speaking, so you can see the pictures of Ariane on the launch pad. As Raphael was speaking, we hit the next milestone in our in the chronology, which is, of course, the -10 weather update. And
yes.
I'm looking at the board. All is green. I
All
have
is green right
had
now.
anything in my earpiece. I don't see anyone picking up a mic. So it's looking good so far.
It is green and we're good to go.
Looking good to go.
What we check, like Stefan said, we are usually checking the wind at high altitude, the wind in the vicinity of the launch pad, and also the risk of lightning. Yesterday, it is the risk of lightning that prevented us from launching, but today, everything's good. We're good to go. We can continue the operations.
That sounds great. And continuing the operations means that we're heading towards what we call the synchronized sequence. We'll talk about that in just a minute. So there's another team. You see the teams working here. Final preparation on the way here in Jupiter Control. But of course, there's another team at the Launch Control Center, which is much closer to the launch. It's about 3-4 kilometers to the launcher. And they've been working since last night. So they've not slept. Tell us more about them.
Well, these teams are monitoring all the operations during the final countdown. So, for example, they are filling the cryogenic stages. They are cooling the Vulcan engine, that's the main engine of the launcher. They are pressurizing the upper stage sphere.
This is them hard at work in the morning.
Exactly, and I think the images were shot this morning actually. And so it's all these operations that are leading us to the start of the synchronized sequence.
So what is this synchronized sequence, Raphael?
Well, it's a real crucial step.
You have 30 seconds.
Yeah, so I'm going to make it very quick. It's basically a succession of operations aimed at giving more and more autonomy to the launcher and to set it in its flight configuration.
Yeah, because
30
it's
seconds.
an irreversible. Once we've started the synchronized sequence, we can't go back.
No, so we are going.
Absolutely. And we're going to now wait and hear.
À tous de DDO, attention pour le début de la séquence finale lanceur. Top H0 moins 7 minutes.
So there we heard it from the DDO, who is the Range Operations Manager. We'll talk about him in a minute. And he's just announced the start of the synchronized sequence. Just a quick question, why does it have to happen at -7? We were just saying.
Well, I mean, this is obviously not a magic number. This is just the time for all these last-minute operations to be performed. For example, we are topping up and pressurizing the tanks. We switch the power supply from ground to board, and only then the launcher is going to be fully awakened for launch.
Fantastic. For those who are joining us, we are 6 minutes and 20 seconds to lift off of Ariane 5, carrying JUICE on the first leg of its journey into space and towards Jupiter. As Raphael was saying, Ariane, we were talking about this earlier, Ariane normally launches 2 passengers, but this time it's a single passenger. So can you just go quickly into what difference that makes for the launcher?
Oh, for the launcher, this is a very precious passenger, but for the launcher, it remains exactly the same. You have the 2 lateral boosters, you have the main stage, you have the upper stage, 1 fairing. We are also launching towards the east, which is the same direction as for standard telecommunication satellites. Only the final destination is a bit different. This is Jupiter. It is the last time that we performed such a single configuration. One of the last time was for launching the Space Telescope James Webb. Let's hope today is going to be as flawless and smooth.
Absolutely. And let's quickly now go into the film and have a look at the last couple of months of launch preparations.
4 months ago, key elements of the Ariane 5 rocket arrived by boat on the coast of Kourou. They were carefully transferred to Europe's spaceport in large containers. These elements were then assembled in a dedicated building. Here we see the main core being placed into a vertical position, standing 31 meters high. The 2 solid boosters were attached to either side of the main stage. This was followed by the upper cryogenic stage, hoisted into the air and lowered onto the main stage. The whole assembly was then moved to the so-called final assembly building. JUICE arrived last February by plane in Cayenne, the main city of French Guiana. It then traveled an additional 50 kilometers to the spaceport for preparation. There, the spacecraft was removed from its container and carefully inspected in clean room facilities. JUICE was then integrated onto the launch adapter before it was fueled, bringing its weight to just over 6 tons. The spacecraft was transferred to the final assembly building and mated on top of Ariane 5, some 35 meters above the ground. Launch preparation team got their last glimpse of the spacecraft as it was encapsulated inside the fairing, which has kept it safe and sound until today. On Tuesday, Ariane 5, with JUICE on top, was rolled out to the launch pad, where today it waits, poised in anticipation for its ascent into the sky.
So, our passenger is sitting safe and sound, tucked under the fairing, as you can see, waiting for liftoff in just over 2 minutes. Raphael have moved to the skybox overlooking the Jupiter control room, where, as you can imagine, everyone is intensely focused on the last couple of minutes to lift off. And we can see here, as I was telling you, the crowds that were sitting in Jupiter control have now been asked to go out to the terraces on either side of the control room. They are among the lucky... Oh, so I didn't realize you could actually see us. We're sitting here in our skybox. So they're out on the terraces. And they will be the lucky ones who'll be able to see and also feel that launch, because trust me, you feel it. What are we going to see in the last few seconds before liftoff, Raphael?
Well, everything is going to happen quite quickly. So, like I said, the electrical power supplies switch from ground to board. The cryogenic arms, which are feeding the upper stage with fuel, we'll see them retract 6 seconds before liftoff. The Vulcan engine will ignite first. We need to check it's working properly before we switch on the boosters. That's going to happen 7 seconds later. So don't be surprised if you don't see anything during these 7 seconds, because believe me, you will see and you will hear the launch.
And you'll be hearing every milestone being called out by the DDO. He is the Range Operations Manager, and his role is in an... Oh, we'll wait for the 1 minute mark. Raphael.
À tous de DDO, attention pour moins 1 minute. Top H0 moins 1 minute.
Right, so from here on, no more commentary from us. Don't be surprised if it doesn't take off immediately, because of course there are those 7 seconds, Raphael.
Exactly, so just enjoy the launch.
During which the Vulcan engines are set on, and then the launcher takes off.
Go Ariane 5.
Go Ariane 5. Enjoy.
À tous de DDO, attention pour le décompte final. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, top. Allumage Vulcain. Allumage AP, décollage. La propulsion est nominale. La propulsion est nominale.
And there we go. We've seen the Ariane 5 lift off, roaring through the tropical sky, carrying Juice on the first leg of her journey into space. And now she has disappeared under the crowds. And see there, in Kourou, there are many places from which to watch these launches. As you can see, the beach, any place. And here we have a glimpse again of the rocket. Raphael, it's an amazing sensation for you as well, I'm sure.
Yeah, even with the clouds, it's just...
La trajectoire est nominale, tous les paramètres bord sont nominaux.
It's really, really always impressive, and it's an emotion to see it. So the DDO said that the trajectory is nominal, which means that it's working perfectly, it's going as planned.
La propulsion est nominale, le pilotage est calme.
And in fact, just to sum up what the DDO does in 3 words, his responsibility, he's the person who calls out every milestone along the way, and he's in charge of providing information on propulsion, guidance, and trajectory.
Exactly, he's like an orchestra conductor, gathering all the information and summarizing it in real time, and soon we'll have booster separation.
We're waiting for confirmation from the DDO.
Séparation des EEP.
So the boosters have been safely separated. This is great. They have provided 90% of the overall thrust of the flight, so they're doing the main job. And then soon we'll have the separation of the fairing. And by the way, you see a special drawing on the fairing right here. Children around the world were asked to submit artwork
La trajectoire est nominale.
Inspired by Juice's epic journey, and on this fairing, we see one child's interpretation of Jupiter embracing our spacecraft. Everything is nominal.
Tous les paramètres bord sont nominaux.
All parameters are going smoothly.
And there we have it. We've seen it in our 3D
Séparation preuve confirmée.
and we've just heard it from the DDO.
Confirmed. So the fairing was used to protect the satellites from the friction of the air, but also from the noise generated during the ascent phase. We obviously need to safely separate the fairing, otherwise we would not be able to release Juice into space. It also means that we have crossed the limit of the atmosphere. So Juice is on its way to be separated in about 24 minutes from now. So by the way, we will have so the separation of the cryogenic stage when it has placed the launcher on an intermediate orbit. After this, I can mention that during, and we can actually see it on the motion design, because this is 3D animations here, that during the ascent phase, the launcher is set in what we call a barbecue mode. So it's slightly rotating on itself at a speed of 0.7 degrees per second.
Le pilotage est calme, la propulsion est nominale.
So we do this so that every face of the satellite is equally exposed to the sunlight. We just want to avoid overheating in one particular side of the spacecraft, which could damage the instruments. And as a matter of fact, when the upper stage is going to be injected on the targeted orbit, it will also rotate at a speed of 0.5 degrees in one direction, and then at the same speed in the other direction. Again, to avoid overheating on one part of the spacecraft, exactly like, a barbecue.
Exactly. And of course, there are the onboard computers. What are they measuring right now, Raphael?
Well, they optimize the trajectory.
La propulsion est nominale, le pilotage est calme.
Everything is nominal, so they optimize the trajectory in real time. They minimize the propellant consumptions to bring the launcher to the intermediate orbit, targeted at the end of the main stage propulsion phase. And as a matter of fact, we are accelerating a lot right now.
So within the next 3 to 4 minutes, we go from, well, 3.5 kilometers per second to more than 7 kilometers per second.
So how much is that per hour? Because you're the engineer.
25,000 kilometers per hour. And ultimately, Juice will be separated at a speed of almost 10 kilometers per second. And it will be separated at an altitude of 1,533 kilometers.
Very precise. Okay. So the next milestone we are now waiting for, and we'll be hearing this again from the DDO, is the acquisition by our downrange station of Natal. That is located in on an island in the middle of the Atlantic. I'll just wait and hear that from the DDO. He may not have confirmed it orally, but by now it is.
Just to explain, all along the route eastwards, iron is tracked from the ground. So the launcher's functions and vital signs are recorded and sent back to a network of stations that keeps constant watch on the health of the launcher systems.
Par la station télémesure de Natal.
And we have
it.
The confirmation that the first...
Apologies, of course, I did not mean Ascension. I meant Natal, over the border in Brazil, of course. That's the second downrange station.
And just so you know, in all, that's about 1,500 parameters that is collected.
Collected, my goodness. So that there's no way these 1,500 parameters can be analyzed in real time, Raphael. What happens to them?
Well, the complete analysis is carried out in the weeks following the launch by a dedicated team. They provide a wealth of information about how the vehicle performed during its mission. And so this is why we constantly, improve our knowledge of a launcher, launch after launch. And then that's why Ariane 5 is such a reliable launcher.
And so you were talking about the stations, and it's a little bit, you were saying to me earlier when we were chatting, it's like a relay race, these stations, isn't it? These downrange.
Yeah.
You were listening to the DDO. What did he say? I didn't hear him.
He said that all the parameters are working perfectly.
Nominal, that's what we like to hear.
So the flight is perfectly smooth. So yeah, this is like a relay race with one telemetry station passing the baton to the next one, because we want to keep full visibility of the launcher in all dynamic phases of the flight. So the first stations to pick up the data was Galileo, right here in Kourou, followed by Natal in Brazil, then the island of Ascension in the middle of the Atlantic, and followed by Libreville in Gabon, and finally Malindi in Kenya.
As the launcher crosses Africa.
Trajectoire nominale, tous paramètres nominaux.
So we'll have 3 different, very short sequences right now.
Coming up.
The cutoff of the main stage.
We should hear that.
The jettison of the main stage, and then the ignition of the upper stage. So it should be confirmed.
Extinction Vulcain. Séparation EPC.
And the ignition coming up.
Yep. Waiting for the
Allumage ESC confirmé.
That's a very good news. That's very important.
You should see the smile on Raphael's face. You can't, because we're in our little booth. Because we forgot to mention that we are now in the sky booth, where we have a fantastic view over Jupiter, where we can see the crowds gathered. And yes, and so you cannot see the smile on Raphael's face, but he is delighted that this stage has gone perfectly.
Yeah, the ignition of upper stage is absolutely key, because it's always quite a little bit tricky to ignite a liquid stage in the emptiness of space. I told you that on the ground we wait for a few seconds to check that the Vulcan engine is correctly ignited before
visibilité par la station de Galileo.
Before liftoff. But in space, it's just not possible to do that. You cannot send somebody to repair the engine. Also in zero gravity, the propellant is floating in all directions.
Le pilotage est calme.
The thermal environment is also not the same as it is on the ground. So, you know, there are many factors that make it quite
Trajectoire
challenging
nominale, tout paramètres bord nominaux.
and complex to ignite the engine in space.
So we were mentioning earlier, this is the penultimate Ariane 5 launch, which for more than a quarter of a century has provided Europe with reliable and independent access to space, which Josef Aschbacher was talking about earlier. Ariane 6 will be taking over. Europe's best engineers are building on the success of Ariane 5, and there's already a fully integrated Ariane 6 on the launch pad right here in Kourou. You're going to tell us about that, Raphael. So can you take us through the latest developments with Ariane 6?
So last year was quite exciting for Ariane 6 with the start of what we call the combined test, corresponding to the meeting between the launcher and the launch pad here in Europe Spaceport. Here we see a fully representative version of Ariane 6, which has been assembled with the main core raised vertically, directed on the launch pad. The upper composite was then hoisted and mated on top of the launcher. This operational scheme is actually a big difference with respect to what is done with Ariane 5. It is made possible thanks to this mobile gantry, which will obviously be removed during launch. And also, 2023 is going to be also a busy year for Ariane 6, obviously. In January, the launcher was connected to the control bench, and the first power test was performed. Then dry run will be performed, followed by the actual fueling operations of the central core.
La trajectoire est nominale, tous les paramètres bord sont nominaux.
Teams will also perform hot firing test of the lower stage engine, Vulcan 2.1, including a long firing test. And hot firing tests of the upper stage were successfully performed in 2022 and beginning of 2023 in Lampershausen at the German Aerospace Center. Next ones are under preparation. So launcher elements that will be used for the Ariane 6 first flight will arrive in French Guiana using the new generation canopy vessel, which will be equipped with sails and hybrid propulsion.
La trajectoire est nominale, tous les paramètres à bord sont nominaux.
So that we can start the first real launch campaign of Ariane 6. And so today, the prototype of Ariane 6, stands on the launch pad, ready to continue the combined test. So good luck for this very ambitious and incredible program.
And Raphael, we heard while you were explaining all of this, we heard that the DDO called out the loss of signal with the Natal tracking station. Now, there we go. And we didn't hear that it hadn't been picked up by the next station. Is that normal?
This is perfectly normal to have short visibility holes during non-dynamic phases of the launch. In this case, we have no visibility for just 63 seconds before the Ascension ground station picks the signal back. So this should come in any seconds now.
Acquisition de la télémesure par la station d'Ascension.
Your timing is perfect.
Confirmed.
So we've been picked up by the next downrange station, that is Ascension, the tiny little island in the South Atlantic, and everything is nominal, the DDO is telling us. So from what I understand, we're going back to Ariane 6, there's a very healthy order book already for Ariane 6 launches, Raphael.
Yeah, Ariane 6 is already quite successful on the market, with already 28 launchers sold for both institutional and commercial customers. It is a very versatile, flexible launcher, perfectly suited for complex missions and satellite constellations deployment thanks to its high lift-off capability and its reignitable upper stage engine.
La trajectoire est nominale, tous les paramètres bord sont nominaux.
It's nice to hear the regular updates from the DDO that everything is going to plan. For those of you who are joining us, Ariane 5 lifted off 14 minutes ago, just over 14 minutes ago, from the European spaceport here in French Guiana, carrying ESA's Jupiter Icy Moons Explorer into outer space. We're bringing you this live show from the Jupiter control room, where the operational teams are overseeing the mission's progress. JUICE is due to separate in about 13 minutes' time, but this is just the start of its long journey on its way to Jupiter. Let's find out more about the tech on board that will help it fulfill its mission.
La propulsion est nominale, le pilotage est calme.
At the heart of the JUICE mission, led by ESA, is a giant bird-like spacecraft with large solar panel wings stretching out on either side of its main body. With a mass of 6,100 kilos at launch, JUICE is a heavy spacecraft carrying 10 high-precision instruments including the most powerful remote sensing, geophysical and in-situ payloads ever flown to the outer solar system.
Building a spacecraft which has to fly around Jupiter is a challenge. To operate a spacecraft, you need energy, you need power. And normally we get power from the sun using solar array. But around Jupiter, there is not much sun. Therefore, the solar array has to be very big. There is also another challenge. All the stuff that we built there has to survive very low temperature. And the third one is that the environment around Jupiter is very radioactive. That's why I think the solar array, which is very exposed and put together these three difficult technology, is really a great piece of engineering. Maybe a piece of art.
The instruments were contributed by the JUICE mission's scientific partner. The spacecraft was developed and built by Airbus, and Ariane Group's Savoir-Faire equipped JUICE with the chemical propulsion system that will drive it to Jupiter and its icy moons on an 8-year cruise.
We will provide the propulsion system for JUICE, which ensures that after leaving the launcher, it arrives correctly at Jupiter's moon and can work properly there. It's a fascinating thing, especially because the technical requirements of such a long journey, with so many constraints to consider, challenge each of us in a unique way.
Engineers have devised advanced technological solutions so that JUICE can operate in extreme environments, face Jupiter's high radiation belt, the long distance and harsh temperatures. Its 2.5-meter diameter antenna will send the data JUICE collects back to mission control, although it can take close to an hour to travel to Earth. The European mission JUICE is going to be a real revolution. Its collection of valuable data will be used by scientists for years to come and help unlock some of the greatest mysteries of the universe.
So, Raphael, JUICE is an emblematic European science mission. So what is it about this particular mission that inspires you as a rocket scientist?
Well, dream. And dream has always been a very strong driving force.
Acquisition par la station télémesure de Libreville.
For me, but also for, I think, everybody who works in the space industry. And, if we go on a more personal note, actually, before working at Arianespace, many years ago already in my life as a space writer, I remember that one of my first real article I wrote was about Jupiter's icy moon and the preparation of the JUICE mission with a focus on the moon Europa. And you can imagine that I would have never thought back then that I would be here standing at Kourou spaceport in the Jupiter room to comment on its deployment into space. And I think I'm not mistaken when I say that all my colleagues are inspired by such emblematic mission. It really gives us an extra boost each time.
And especially when it comes to a mission aimed at looking for signs of life, that is just something else. It's difficult to actually fathom.
Can you, I mean, yeah, the ambition of JUICE, and it's a very complex mission, by the way.
La propulsion est nominale, le pilotage est calme.
So everything is nominal, but thinking that one probe is going to be around the moons of Jupiter, which are unexplored worlds with oceans of liquid water under the ice surface.
La trajectoire est nominale, tous les paramètres bord sont nominaux.
Where exobiologists expect to find some forms of life. We don't know, like microbes, maybe shrimps, maybe small fish. Probably not, but let's dream. And especially on the moon of Europa, it's just absolutely incredible.
Indeed, Raphael, hundreds of professionals in Europe are working on this crucial mission. We met some of them earlier, and as we know, it takes a whole family to put such an expedition together. So let's hear from some of the partners of this mission.
Bonjour, je m'appelle Victoire de Maincourt, je suis nationalité française, je viens de Toulouse, je travaille chez Arianespace.
My name is Rossella and I originally come from Italy.
My name is Oliver Troll and I'm a German rocket engineer working for Ariane Group in Bremen.
I'm Italian and I'm a telecommunication engineer.
Je suis espagnol, je viens de la ville de Madrid
et ça fait 3 ans que je travaille au Centre spatial guyanais.
Je suis chargée du suivi en temps réel du lanceur et de la mission et de vérifier son bon déroulement afin de rassurer à la fois les personnes qui travaillent sur le lanceur et évidemment le client.
In Kourou, during the launch campaign of JUICE, our goal is to check all the final full functional tests, so all the final checks after the transport of the satellite here in Kourou and before the launch.
I'm responsible for the follow-up of the stage integration up to the launch, the treatment of technical anomalies with an end-to-end view, the technical consistency of all information, and the on-site presence in Kourou during launch campaign.
Je travaille à la sauvegarde vol. Mon rôle le jour J consiste à surveiller la trajectoire du lanceur et les équipements à bord. Et si on constate que la mission cesse d'être nominale, on pourrait être amené à intervenir pour assurer que tout se passe en sécurité pour les viandes et les personnes et ainsi maîtriser les risques.
I take care of the assembly and integration of all the units of the spacecraft, and afterwards to make sure that the test campaign goes as planned and that the spacecraft will perform as expected once in space.
If I want to define team spirit in 3 keywords, I can say the first one is collaboration, the second keyword is coordination, and then the third keyword, which is the most important for me, is to have fun. It helps overcoming difficulties and obstacles. So yeah, for me this is the most important part.
So we are coming up to 22 minutes after liftoff, which means that in just over 5 minutes, JUICE will be separating from the mothership and starting its own life in space. Raphael, can you give us an update on where we're at right now?
So everything is working perfectly.
Acquisition par la station télémesure de Malindi.
So we have the Malindi telemetry station acquisition. So in the past 5 minutes, we went from 190 kilometers to more than 500 kilometers of altitude. So it now has a speed of 9.6 kilometers per second, which is absolutely gigantic. It is almost the speed at which JUICE will be separated into space. During the next 5 minutes, we'll increase altitude even faster. We'll gain an additional 1,000 kilometers in altitude. And by the way, the weight of our structure right now is 14 tons about, only 2% of the initial mass of the Ariane 5 when it was on the ground.
That is just unbelievable, 2%. Ariane 5 typically launches geostationary transfer orbit launches. So here we're sending JUICE obviously much, much farther on an escape orbit. How is this different? How does it differ, for example, from launching a telecom satellite, which are many of the satellites that are launched with Ariane 5?
Well, the energy to provide to the spacecraft by the launcher is higher. It needs to escape the gravitational pull of the Earth. Also for geostationary launches, we usually have a launch window of typically 30 minutes to 1 hour and a half, let's say, during which we can try and launch. And today's mission is sort of a rendezvous mission. And there was no launch window. It was what we call an instant launch. So we had to launch an exact time. So this is why everything has to go smoothly, even the weather before launching. Also, geo launches to the geostationary orbit usually happen in the evening. Today we launched in the morning, meaning that the team have been working all night during the final countdown. And also, we had to slightly adapt the filling of the tanks of the upper stage with cryogenic propellant, as the launcher was exposed to the sun since early morning, 6 a.m. So the sun heats and increases the pressure of the tanks, so we had to slightly underload it by 120 tons, which is kilos, sorry.
So how is it this mission in itself different in terms of preparation?
Well, we needed to take extra care in terms of cleanliness, because before leaving the Earth, we want to know exactly what kind of biological material JUICE takes with it. In French Guiana, there were several institutes which took samples from JUICE in the various satellite preparation rooms, Of course, most of the microbes will be sterilized in space, watched out by space radiations, but some can survive. Here we see on the image His Majesty the King of Belgium and His Royal Highness Prince Gabriel, who...
And they are here as VIP guests because Belgium has contributed rather importantly towards preparations for JUICE. So we were talking about, we were looking at the difference in preparation, weren't we?
The second main difference is that, you know, JUICE will perform very precise magnetic field measurements around Ganymede, the moon of Jupiter. And we had to measure many times the magnetic environment of JUICE during the launch campaign on the ground to make sure that in space it will measure only the magnetic environment of Ganymede and not its own magnetic field.
Because it has a very, very strong magnetic field, of course.
Exactly.
Okay, and so in a nutshell, looking at the time, we actually have, I haven't heard it from the DDO, did you?
So right now, we are in the stage where the upper stage is performing slight orientation maneuvers to separate the spacecraft in a very specific direction. It's important to do so on time in a very precise way, as it will really drive the satellite injection accuracy and have an impact on the rest of the spacecraft's lifetime in space. Just to give you an idea,
manœuvre d'orientation au profit de JUICE se poursuit de manière nominale.
Trajectory correction maneuver. And so the better the injection precision, the less important the maneuver is going to be, meaning that JUICE will be able to save its precious fuel for the rest of the mission.
And Raphael, we are 30 seconds away from separation. What are we going to see exactly? And then we'll stop the commentary and wait for the moment. In a nutshell?
Well, let me remind you that this is 3D animation here, but the teams are receiving signals and information in real time, and it is them who will confirm the separation of JUICE on its liberation orbit. They will provide all necessary information to ESA teams so that they can inquire the spacecraft.
Let's wait for confirmation from the DDO.
Séparation JUICE confirmée.
And this has been confirmed that the spacecraft is safely separated on its targeted orbit. And you can see on the images the relief from the teams.
This is years and years of work on the part of these teams.
Decades of work for some teams.
Yes. And it is so good to see such joy on their faces.
No, but
of
look
course,
at this.
A reminder that this is the very, very first leg of JUICE's journey.
You can see the emotions on the faces. That's really what makes space activities so special. It's like a reboost each time we launch a satellite. And what a satellite right now. Honestly, I can only wish good luck to JUICE and all the teams for this incredible journey through the outer solar system. That's absolutely amazing what we are living right now.
The atmosphere here in Jupiter is effervescent. There is a true sense of joy and happiness. But as I was saying, of course, this is the very beginning of the journey, and we will be letting, of course, the teams in Darmstadt take over shortly, because they are the ones who are going to be confirming acquisition of signals, first signs of life from our passenger. You were going to say, Raphael?
No, I was saying to say, this is the beginning of the journey for JUICE. For the launcher, we may perform what we call a passivation of the upper stage, meaning that the remaining propellant of the tanks is expelled in order to prevent any risk of explosion in space. This is a requirement for a sustainable use of space. And we also perform a very small disposal maneuver in order to remove the upper stage from any operational orbit, giving an extra push of 13 meters per second. And so, yes, and then this is going to be the real end of the mission. for the launcher. But right now, let's focus on the joy on people's face. This is absolutely incredible. JUICE is on its way to Jupiter.
And it is especially a joy when you know, considering the stress that a delay brings. Even though we know that the passenger is safe, it is a lot of work for many people to have to delay, and a very safe choice to make, of course, as we can see today.
So again, in a few minutes, ESA teams will acquire the satellites.
We're now waiting for, of course, for comments from Stéphane Israël, who's just been mic'd up in the fishbowl, and he'll be with us very shortly. So we'll of course tell you when he's with us. We'll let you know, and we'll let you enjoy the smiles and happiness on everyone's face. And here we have Stéphane, who is marked up and ready. Stéphane Israël, over to you. A few seconds delay, but he's with us. Over to you, Stéphane.
Okay. So today's mission is a full success. Team Europe has perfectly delivered. I really want to pay our tribute to all the teams who have made this success possible. Arianespace and Ariane Group team for sure, all the supply chain, ESA, our customer, and Airbus Defence and Space, who is the JUICE manufacturer. It's really the success of Team Europe today, with the support as well for sure of CNES here on the spaceport, and with the design authority of Ariane 5. It is absolutely perfect launch today, and it is now the start of a journey for JUICE, 8 years journey.
Thank you very much, Stéphane Israël, Arianespace CEO. So our teams are now going to, at ESOC, are now going to be taking over from here. So we're going to hand over to them in mission control, ESA mission control in Darmstadt. Over to you, Matt.
Thank you very much, Lisa. So welcome back to everyone. We are standing in the heart of the European Space Operations Centre, ESOC, a facility in Darmstadt. And this is the mission control room right behind me, the main one. We've got a couple of major milestone events coming up. In less than 5 minutes, we hope to get the first acquisition of signal. That's where we actually talk to the spacecraft itself. And that gets picked up by an ESA ground station. There'll be an icon on the screen that signifies that, and that's a huge satellite dish. And in about an hour, we should then have the final and next key milestone, which is the deployment of JUICE's enormous solar panels. So I'm going to be talking to loads of mission scientists and engineers on this mission. And if you're watching and have questions, then you can ask them. You can go onto social media and go to #AskESA, and we will pick them up, and I'll try and get those questions answered. I'm super lucky, and we're all really super excited as well. This has been an amazing day after yesterday's disappointment. For the next half hour, I've got Deputy Flight Director Bruno Souza, who's standing there in the heart of the operation. So, Bruno, how is it looking there in the nerve centre right now?
Well, what a beautiful flight. What a beautiful flight from Ariane 5. Everybody's quite excited, but now starts the hard part. The next major critical milestone we have is called acquisition of signal. We will expect to hear from the spacecraft from our ground station at New Norcia in Australia. If you see behind me, there is a plot over there on the screen. If this was a hospital and the satellite was our patient, that would be the electrocardiogram. And what we want to see there is a nice, beautiful shape, should resemble the Himalayas with a Everest in the middle. That indicates the satellite is alive and healthy. If we only see the Kilimanjaro, we'll have some work to do. If we don't see anything at all, we'll just have to be patient and wait for it to come. It will come for sure. So now starts the hard part. The teams will start working. Pay attention to the acquisition of signal coming up at any minute.
So much has happened already. As you can see on the bottom of your screen, with 4 icons representing major milestones in the launch today. We've made it through the first 2, which is unbelievably exciting. Launch and separation of juice. Well done to those teams. The next one you can see is the ground station, big satellite dish, which is our acquisition of signal icon, and the solar array deployment icon is that final one. As you can see, I've got a new guest here, the first of our guests, Angela Dietz. So I've been watching you working in the control room, so you've come off a night shift, is that right?
Not yet. We started at 6 o'clock in the morning.
That's
okay.
A night shift. That's a night shift
exactly.
As far as I'm concerned.
It's the second time we did it, and everything worked well. And yes, we launched. It's amazing. And in about a minute, we actually might see the acquisition of signal already. So it might be already coming up now. It's not guaranteed. There could be also delays if the spacecraft has a certain spin from the separation from the launcher.
In fact, we've got this little picture here. What sort of thing are we expecting to see?
Yeah, so like Bruno was explaining, a bit like a mountain in the middle. Yeah, so this is the frequency band the ground station is listening to. So it's pointed at JUICE, where JUICE is supposed to be, and the communication system on the spacecraft was already started, so it's already transmitting data. But here we wait for the spacecraft actually to come over the horizon, so to arrive, to be seen from the ground station.
So we've got have we got a small window where we can see this, or how big's the window where we can actually see this acquisition
Well,
of
first
signal?
time would be actually now, but it could be delayed up to 40 minutes. So really depends how the spacecraft is moving. If it's a little bit tumbling, the spacecraft will first do an acquisition and stabilize the attitude.
Okay, right. We're just coming up to this acquisition window, so I'm going to go over to Bruno in the control room and see if we can see what's happening.
We just have to be patient. The signal is not there yet. At any moment now, it will appear. Actually, I will not bother you describing it too much. Just stay with me and watch that signal until it pops up with the signal of our spacecraft.
ODOM.
OMOD.
Quick brief from New Norcia. They see the downlink signal from Ariane.
Copy.
So it's about seconds or minutes that we will see JUICE.
It's gonna come. Copy that. Just stand by. No signal yet.
La dernière manœuvre d'orientation de l'étage supérieur se poursuit de manière nominale.
Give me a go. We still don't have acquisition of signal at this point. This satellite, as you might have heard already, has been separated from the launcher, from Ariane 5. As it separates, there's always a certain rotation, a tumbling effect. The satellite needs to first prime the thrusters. That means it needs to make all the pipes open such that the fuel and the oxidizer can flow through it. At this point, it can use the thrusters for control, and then it will try to find its own orientation in space, and at that point, it will switch on the transmitter and start transmitting. So there's always a certain uncertainty about the time when we'll actually receive the signal. We have to be patient, we have to keep looking, and I'm sure it will wake up quite soon.
So thanks very much, Bruno. So Angela, what does it mean? What does this actually mean? How long do we have to kind of try and get this signal acquired? And you know, where are we? What's your feelings right now?
For me, this is still nominal, yeah,
yep.
Still quite nominal. So this is really what we said, like 51, that the spacecraft comes over the horizon of the antenna, so could be seen from the antenna, but that doesn't mean that the spacecraft is already in a state to really transmit. It's what Bruno was said, so it's really still finding, stabilizing the attitude. So yeah, only in about half an hour we would start to get nervous. So from this point on, it's still nominal for our point of view.
And if it is tumbling, and the spacecraft itself does its own kind of trying to work itself out, and that obviously there's millions of different scenarios, I'm assuming, of how it does that. So is that why there might be this delay in terms of how it works itself out?
Yeah, there's some studies, some investigations that we've done, how much the tumbling could be, and yeah, it could be worst case. Yeah, yep. Just taking this time.
Okay, well, thanks very much. So thanks very much for joining us. It's really tense now. It's super tense. So if you've just joined us and you are following the JUICE spacecraft after its separation from Ariane 5, we're hoping to actually talk to the spacecraft soon. It's starting its billion-kilometre journey to Jupiter. Well, many billion-kilometre journey to Jupiter. We're in the European Space Operations Centre, where the fleet of the European satellites and spacecraft are actually flown and controlled by a large multinational team, people, Angela, scientists and engineers. If you want to ask questions of my many guests that are coming up, you can use the hashtag #AskESA, and I'll try and get them answered as soon as I can. But in the meantime, I'm going to switch you back over to Bruno.
To me.
Oh, for the who's who in the man control. Yeah, tell us who's who who all this international team are.
Just as well, it's a good opportunity to introduce everybody who's in the control room right now. And I will start with this side of the room. And this function are the software coordinators. Today, Marta and Luca and Danielle are taking care of all our software. So all the software that is running on these consoles and on the servers, it's taken care by them. If anything fails, they bring it back up. Right next to them are the ground operations managers, and they are taking care of all the facilities, all the ground stations, making sure that we are connected to the ground station, configuring the ground station to listen in on the satellite, so they will be responsible for finding the satellite in the sky shortly. Now we move over here to the flight control team. And in the flight control team, they're responsible for operating the satellite. So they will take over control once we see it in the sky. Different functions are present here. On the front row, platform is responsible for our radio communication system and for our thermal system. Rudy is on shift at the moment. Right next to him, Arthur is taking care of the data handling. That's our onboard computer, our mass memory, and all the routing of data to the ground is taken care by Arthur. And then over here on this side, we have the attitude and orbit control expert. In this case, Giulio today. He's taking care of monitoring the separation sequence and what's happening on board. He's also our system engineer. And leading all these people at the moment is my dear friend and colleague for many years, Ignacio Tanco, who I may add is probably one of the best spacecraft operations managers in the world right now. At least the only one flying to Jupiter today. And over here on the last row, we have the flight director. He's also on this side of the ocean, orchestrating, like a maestro, all the teams that are now working towards a successful mission for JUICE. And next to him, we have project support, the project representative. They have been working on the development of JUICE for many years, and they have been managing the program, and now they are finally seeing the fruit of their long years of work. And they are also our interface to the Airbus team that built the satellite, and they're sitting in the room behind this wall, providing us all the support that we need. Back to you, Matt.
Thanks very much, Bruno. Right, always absolutely amazing to have Bruno's expertise on the floor and just all those amazing people. What an absolutely awesome team they are. So if you've just joined us, we're live in Germany, here in the heart of the control centre, where the European fleet of satellites and spacecraft are indeed flown, as we've just seen. You can join in at home and send in your questions at #AskESA. So right now, we're trying to talk to the spacecraft, and that is done with a ground station called New Norcia, which is actually in Australia. And amazingly, we're going to be able to speak to the manager of New Norcia, Susie Jackson, all the way the other side of the world. We've got to go right the way through the world to get there. Yeah, let's go there right now. Hello, Susie. So right behind you, I can see an enormous dish that looks very much like our acquisition of Signal Icon.
G'day.
Is that the one that we're actually going to be using to try and talk to the JUICE spacecraft?
Yes, so this is New Norcia 1. This is our 35-metre main antenna here at New Norcia, and we're currently having a go at acquiring JUICE as we speak. As you can see, we're up a little ways away from the horizon already, so the spacecraft is up in the sky here. Conditions here are really good, really nominal, and we're waiting for the signal to come in from the spacecraft.
So that does look like an enormous dish. Does that track it straight away, or is there another dish that sort of can move faster and get a hold of the spacecraft before this massive, enormous dish does?
Yeah, so for these early acquisitions of spacecraft that are still close to the Earth, we cheat a little bit because we've got such a big dish here with New Norcia 1. It has a very, very, very narrow beam, so it's only able to spot a spacecraft in a very small, very well-defined area. Because we aren't completely sure where JUICE is yet, there might be a little bit of variation in its trajectory, although I hear everything's nominal so far. We use a smaller antenna, which is up behind me on the hill, called New Norcia 2, and that's a 4.5-metre antenna, and it has a beam width that's close to 10 times as big, so it's about half a degree. So if JUICE is up there and it's transmitting to us, we'll see it. So as soon as JUICE gets its act together and gets its attitude stabilised and starts talking to us, we'll definitely hear that signal.
Yeah, JUICE is keeping us all guessing at the moment. So how long can this dish actually track JUICE for? Is it for the whole day, or how does that work?
Yeah, so our nominal mission tonight will be about 7 hours from AOS right the way through to what we call LOS, loss of signal. So we'll track up into the sky up to about 50 degrees, and then while we're doing that, JUICE is moving away from the planet and the planet's rotating underneath JUICE. So it'll actually come up, and rather than going over the other side like a normal satellite that's in Earth's orbit would do, it'll actually go up and then come back down as the spacecraft moves away and as the Earth rotates underneath. So we'll see, if you're still watching in 7 hours, which I'm sure you won't, we'll see the antenna set again, pretty much back where we came from.
Yes, Susie, I've got some great news for you. We have acquisition of signal, so I'm going to go over to Bruno in the main control room. This is super ace news.
Wow, wow. What can I say? These are the words that every spacecraft operations engineer wants to hear. And Andrea Komatsu just said them to us. He said, we have acquisition of signal. The spacecraft is transmitting telemetry. It's flowing into our systems. Everybody's super excited, super happy. Well, it's a lot of work from now onwards, and we have to keep on going. So we'll keep reporting back how we're doing. First of all, we've reached a fantastic milestone. The spacecraft is alive. You start seeing Mount Everest popping up there in the plot right now. The telemetry is flowing and nominal. We will now start checking every subsystem to make sure that everything is healthy after this crazy ride into space. And then we'll report back to tell you how we're doing. Back to you, Matt.
Thanks so much, Bruno. I mean, I think it's actually made it more exciting, yes. Now, don't forget, you can get involved at home and ask questions. And we are on a roller coaster, so we've just hit our first of our milestones. We've got one more really big one coming up. So if you fancy joining in, asking questions, then please do send in your facts. So I'm going to be joined in a second after I show you a video about how exciting this whole journey has been for mankind, getting here to send a spacecraft off to Jupiter. And so we're going to play you a little video now, and I'm going to take you back in time. We're going to go back, far back in time. So I've got my newest guest. I'm joined by Anna-Zina Solomonidou, the senior scientist at the Hellenic Space Centre, who's been working on JUICE. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
So we just saw a video that went back to the moment where Galileo saw Jupiter with his own eyeballs. I mean, this is incredible. So tell us why Jupiter is just so fascinating.
Well, Jupiter has countless fascinating facts. There's so many things to tell about Jupiter, right? First of all, it's the largest planet of our solar system. It's really massive. It's similar to a star, but it never got big enough in order to start burning. So compared to Earth, it's more than 300 times more massive than Earth is. Pretty big. Mm-hmm. And in fact, it's actually 2.5 times more massive than any other planet of our solar system combined. So that's about size, right? Then it has very big storms, like the red giant spot that we have on Jupiter, that it's been there for hundreds of years, and it's covered also with clouds that they're like 50 kilometers thick. So you can imagine about the size, right, and what we're talking about. It also has rings. We don't know that much, about Jupiter's rings compared to what we know about Saturn, for instance, but they're there. It's just they're a little bit fainter, yeah. It has been observed by 8 different spacecrafts throughout the time, and of course it has the most moons than any other planet of our solar system. So we count 95 moons up to today, and some of them, the Galilean moons, are so interesting and so important that we're sending a mission to go there and look at them, a dedicated one.
we've had this picture up on the screen. Is this the sort of thing that Galileo might have seen through his telescope?
Well, I can imagine that he didn't see that precisely. It was something fainter and more blurry. But you know, he saw something, so that was very important.
Yeah. So when he first looked at Jupiter, did he actually see the moons when he first saw it, or did he have to sort of adapt his optics and get better and better at actually being a telescope maker?
Exactly. Yeah. So while Jupiter was known since the ancient times, Galileo was the first one in 1610 that made a detailed observation of the planet. And because he made some improvements to his small telescope, he was able to observe more distinctly some bodies, and that's how he was able to observe the Galilean satellites. So we're talking about Io, Europa, Ganymede, and Callisto. So, yeah, and in a sense, Jupiter is going to try to do the same if we think about it.
Yeah.
So Galileo improved his small telescope, his main instrument, and he was able to see something that wasn't seen before. So now with JUICE, we're going back with state-of-the-art, new and unique instruments to improve what we've seen before with previous missions. So in a sense, JUICE is going to significantly enhance our knowledge and push further the capabilities of previous missions and previous observations.
So yeah, these Galilean moons, as you said, is so synonymous with Jupiter. The actual mission itself has actually got a tribute to the man himself, Galileo. So do you know? Can you tell us just a little bit about that tribute?
Yeah, there's a plaque that is mounted on the spacecraft. And it actually replicates a few pages from...
fact, I think we have a little bit of a screen here of it.
Exactly. So you see this being mounted on the spacecraft, and it replicates a few images from Galileo's book, where he described the observations of the moons back in 1610. So I think it's very emotional, and it's a very nice touch to bring something from Earth to this, you know, outer solar system body. And say, okay, we've been following you for so many years.
Yeah, it's beautiful. I'm just going to remind listeners that they can ask questions of my guest. You just have to find social media and just use the hashtag #AskESA. We're actually in Darmstadt in Germany, which is where they fly and look after all these amazing spacecraft that the European Space Agency build. And I'm here with scientists, engineers and spacecraft specialists. It's a real special moment to talk to these people on what is one of Europe's biggest missions ever, this journey to JUICE. I'm going to hand over to Bruno because he has some news for us. Let's go.
More good news. The spacecraft is in a hurry. We acquired a signal and we just realized that the spacecraft is going quite fast through the configuration and to the automatic sequence that is leading us towards the solar array deployment. So in fact, the last pyrotechnics that will release the solar rays will fire in about 15 minutes. And at that point, we might start seeing the solar rays then deploying and reaching their final position. So all in all, we should count on about 20 minutes until we have the solar rays fully deployed.
Thanks so much, Bruno. That is like amazing news. We've gone from being scared to being joyous here. So someone's actually sent in a question from Twitter, and it says here, a question from my daughter. Why are you going there?
That's the key question, I think. We're going there because we want to go, you know, we're going to be close and personal with the habitable worlds of our solar system. And we have amazing examples there. We're talking about Ganymede, Europa, and Callisto. So we go in there, because we have some fundamental questions to answer, and these are coming from the previous missions. And some of them is very simple. How do these moons look like in detail? We're going to spend some time there, so we will have the opportunity to look closely and overlap, you know, go back to the previous, to places that we visited before and see how do they change with time. We want to see also, we want to examine, explore a typical gas giant like Jupiter. You know, this is an amazing opportunity. And we want to see how this complex environment formed and shaped all these moons. So we have pretty good reasons to go back. And specifically, if we think about the moons, we're going to look very closely at Ganymede, and Ganymede is the largest satellite of our solar system. It has its own magnetic field that doesn't happen with other satellites, right?
Super interesting, yeah.
And it's a very good example of a liquid environment. Let's not forget that the most interesting fact about these moons is that they're ocean worlds. And what does that mean? Is that they hide a liquid ocean underneath their icy surface. So Ganymede is a very good example of a liquid environment trapped in between icy layers. Then we go into Europa, and Europa is 4.5 billion years old, but the surface is only 20 to 180 million years old. So it's very, very young. And it also, we suspect that the water there is in Europa is double the water we have here on Earth. So it's the best candidate. If you want to find life out of Earth, Europa is a very good candidate to go and, you know, search and look around.
Well, I mean, that's why we're going, isn't it?
Right.
The water things. Thanks so much for joining us. I mean,
thank you, it's my pleasure.
The whole purpose of going to Jupiter is just blowing my mind. Exactly. But thank you so much. So we've just got to the hour mark after launch. So I think it's about time we went back to Bruno and got more of an update. What's happening in the control room, Bruno?
Hi, Matt. It's all going according to plan. The pyros are firing in sequence. Every time one fires, we wait another 2 minutes, the next one fires. We will get an information as soon as we reach the last ones, and then we will know that we are just a few minutes away from full array deployment. So we just have to hang on a few minutes more. Everything is going super smooth. All subsystems have reported already that the spacecraft looks quite healthy, so no reason to worry at this point. Let's just keep watching. A few minutes more, and we should have also power being produced by the spacecraft itself.
Thanks so much, Bruno. So, sending a spacecraft to Jupiter really is no mean feat, with some very hard obstacles to overcome. I'm delighted that I'm joined by Frederick Fay from Airbus, who are the main contractor that actually built the actual spacecraft itself. So, welcome, Frederick. So, what are the challenges for the spacecraft? It's a super harsh environment, isn't it, space? And so what are the challenges that it faces on this 12-year timeline? In fact, we're looking at this timeline here. Can you describe a little bit about the journey, about how the actual journey works? And
yes, so in fact, the mission was defined to maximize the mass of science instruments to be brought to Jupiter. And to do that, Ariane 5 was not powerful enough to send directly the spacecraft toward Jupiter. The payload mass would have been too small. And what has been designed by ESOC mission analysis team and then tuned by flight dynamics team is multiple flyby to benefit from gravity assist of massive planet on the way to Jupiter. And as a result, we have 1 year after launch, we'll have a lunar Earth flyby, which will first accelerate the spacecraft. In fact, send it toward Venus 1 year after, then accelerate again around the Earth, a third acceleration around the Earth, and then a 2.5 leg to Jupiter. And it was within the mission capability to be able to reach Jupiter within 10 years. It was a requirement for the mission analysis. And each year you can find, depending on the configuration of the planet, you can find some trajectory with Venus and Earth, with Venus, Earth and Mars, and different combination. And in fact, the combination that we have today for this launch window is Earth, Venus, Earth, Earth, and then Jupiter. With some peculiarity on the first one, to have an even more effective kick at the beginning of the mission, mission analyst guy have found a possibility to use lunar and Earth in a 1 day separation. So first you are at 700 kilometers just around the moon, and then you are 1 day after around the Earth, and you have a double acceleration that improves the overall energetical scenario. Then at Jupiter we'll have a full tour. with 3 moons explored, so Callisto, Ganymede, and Europe, 2 times Europe. And this is done through 35 other flyby. So these flyby are both scientific, but also used to shape the orbit and progressively to go toward an orbit that will enable us to orbit around Ganymede. That will be also very first in spacecraft mechanics.
Yeah, so there's a few firsts there. I've not seen a lunar Earth flyby. Is that the first time that's been done by any
to my knowledge, yes.
Yeah, I've not seen that before. So, and the other interesting thing is we're going in completely the wrong direction. I don't know if you know this, but Venus seems to be right towards the Sun.
Yeah, Venus is closer to the Sun than Jupiter, but Venus is has a mass similar to the Earth, so it's very effective in terms of planetary gravity assist. It's more effective than Mars, that is in between Earth and Jupiter, but combining all those planets at the end allows a good trip.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, isn't it, that even in 6 years' time, she's still going to be flying around the Earth. Yeah. And it's incredible, isn't it? So on this journey, we've got really extreme temperatures, haven't we? We've got, like, I'm assuming by Venus it gets incredibly hot, and out by Jupiter there's virtually no sunlight.
This is one of the difficulties of the mission. To benefit from this Venus flyby, it means also that we have to face solar flux will be very high, about two times the flux received on Earth, so about 3 kilowatt per square meter. We go even closer to the Sun than Venus, so, and at Jupiter we are at a very low sun illumination. So the range of sun illumination is from 1 to 60, meaning that the spacecraft has to cope with very hot and very cold temperature case. In the very hot case, some area of the spacecraft will be at plus 250 degrees C, so we need some specific material. And when we are at Jupiter, in particular at the end of Jupiter eclipse, which can last up to 5 hours, then the temperature of the coldest part of the spacecraft, which is the solar array, drop down to minus 230 degrees C. So you have to design a spacecraft that cope with more or less 500 degrees of excursion in temperature.
Yeah. So, what solutions you've actually developed to do that?
So it's multiple solutions for the body of the spacecraft. It's first isolating the spacecraft from the sun, so it's by multi-layer covers, thermal covers. We have up to 25 layers, which protect the spacecraft. When we are close to the sun, going to Venus, we also point the high gain antenna towards the sun, which is used as the first heat shield. And we communicate with the Earth with another antenna that will be deployed in a couple of hours, the medium gain antenna, that is 60 centimeter diameter. For the solar array, to avoid that the solar array are too hot, we tilt them to minimize the surface presented to the sun. And this tilt is maintained when we are in between the Earth and the sun. And then at Jupiter, we have to benefit from the multi-layer insulation that enable to maintain the electronic inside the spacecraft within, let's say, a comfortable environment with a minimum of heater power that is also provided by electrical heaters.
Yeah, I've got some questions coming in from social media that I'll ask you in a second. I've just got one question that I've been... The radiation that we're getting at...
radiation at Jupiter.
Yeah, radiation at Jupiter. What are the different sources of radiation, and how are they affecting the spacecraft?
Yes, radiation of Jupiter. Jupiter is a big system, in fact, and Jupiter is very massive, and it creates some tidal effect on the closest moon orbiting around Jupiter, which is Io. And Io is not an icy moon, it's a volcanic moon. This volcanism is created by Jupiter gravity, and as a result of that, you have a large ejection of Io material, basically sulfur dioxide, that is then catched by the magnetic field of Jupiter. Magnetic field of Jupiter is huge, so ejection are done at several hundred of kilometers above the surface of Io, captured by the magnetic field, which is rotating fastest than the moon itself in its orbit, and then it is ionized and transformed into ions and electrons and protons. But the electrons are further accelerated and becomes a very high energy electron, much more than what we can face on the Earth, and these are really killer for spacecraft electronics.
So I really want to get this. Someone's asked a question out on the hashtag Ask ESA channel, and they're debating in the office, will this be the heaviest interplanetary spacecraft ever launched?
No, because you have spacecraft going even faster. Voyager, I think it goes faster.
No, heaviest.
Yes, fastest. Heaviest 6 tons for interplanetary, yes, it is heaviest. And the 6 tons are made of 2.2 tons of dry mass and more than 3.6 tons of propellant mass, and let's say 220 kilo of instrument. So for 220 kilo of real science instrument, you need a 6 ton for this mission at launch.
It's a long journey, isn't it? How much fuel do you need?
In fact, the fuel is not really for the journey, it's for very specific maneuver. We need to insert the spacecraft around Jupiter, so it costs about 1/3 of the fuel. Then later on, we need to orbit around Ganymede, so we need also to be captured around Ganymede, so it's another significant portion of the fuel. And we have some small maneuver here and there on the orbit. But most of the propellant is for insertion maneuver.
Yeah, well, thanks so much for telling us all about it's an amazing spacecraft. Apparently, we're going to go over to Susie over in New Norcia.
Truck.
Is that not right?
G'day, Matt.
Ah, hello, Susie. We've got you back.
Hello.
Hello. So Susie.
Hello, Matt. How are you?
Very well, thank you. So Susie, how do we communicate with a spacecraft that's that far away?
Well, the trick is you use a really big antenna like we have here. Here's one I prepared earlier. So the whole idea is the spacecraft can only carry a small antenna, so it can only have a fairly small amount of gain and a fairly small amount of power, because it all has to be driven by the solar panels. Whereas here on Earth, we can have as big an antenna as we like, and we can use as much power as we like. So when we're receiving from the antenna, we use very, very sophisticated cryogenic receivers and a large antenna. And when we're transmitting to the spacecraft, we just use brute force. So we just put up to 20 kilowatts of radio power straight out through the antenna towards the spacecraft, and it all works.
So can you give us some idea about, you know, the different sort of levels of power that you're trying to receive? And because I'm assuming these are ridiculous numbers.
Yeah, so an analogy is if you're standing on the surface of Mars and you have a mobile phone, now of course assuming that your mobile phone is in the frequency bands that we use for space communications, which your mobile phone isn't, but if you had a mobile phone on the surface of Mars, we'd be able to pick up that signal. We have some of the most sensitive receivers on the face of the planet.
Oh, so how long does it take a command to actually reach the spacecraft? Because you're not just receiving signals, are you? You're actually able to talk to the spacecraft as well and then hear back from the spacecraft. How long does that whole process take, and what are the challenges there?
Yeah, so one of the big problems here is that the spacecraft is so far away. So it can take, Jupiter in fact is anywhere from around 40 to 50 minutes away at the speed of light. So of course the commands travel out to Jupiter at the speed of light. So they'll get there in 40 or 50 minutes. A response from the spacecraft can take another 40 or 50 minutes to come back. So you're looking at a round trip time of an hour and a half. So it's one of the comments that I've heard about deep space tracking actually from one of my colleagues at ESA is that it's sometimes like watching grass grow, because it's slow and methodical, and you take your time talking to the spacecraft.
Yeah, can you describe the process of sending commands? Is it different to receiving commands? Is there any similarities and differences? What are the main differences there?
Well, so the main difference, of course, is when we're receiving very small signals. When we transmit back to the spacecraft, we use the same hardware, we use all the same antenna, and we use the same feed horn, we use the same, much the same electronics. But of course, instead of having a very sensitive receiver, we have an extremely large, powerful transmitter. And if you look at the base of the antenna that you might be able to see behind me, we've got a big array of chiller equipment, which is actually used just to cool down the transmitters in the base of the antenna, because we use hundreds of kilowatts of power to actually generate the signal that the spacecraft needs.
So Susie, I've got some more exciting news from Bruno. We're going straight to Bruno in the main control room. So Bruno, give us your update now, please.
So we've just reached the second most critical milestone in this LEOP, which is the deployment of the solar arrays. Just a couple of minutes ago, the last pyros that are cutting the knives of the cables that hold the solar arrays have been fired successfully. And you can see on the screen up there a representation of the spacecraft, and the panel on the left side has just started to deploy. On the left side to that scheme, you see the power consumption and the power production of the spacecraft. The red line indicates that we were consuming power from the batteries. That means we were negative. It was below the scale. And now the blue line shows that the satellite has started to produce its own electricity. So the solar panels on that side have started to deploy. A number of the panels, the sub-panels, are already in their position. They are deployed. They are not yet locked, but they're reaching there. I just got information that one of the wings now looks deployed at microswitch level. That means it's in its final position. And you see that successively the power starts increasing as each of the panels unfolds. I recall that these are some of the largest solar panels ever flown an interplanetary mission. They have 27 meters from one edge to the other edge. In total, they have an area of 85 square meters of solar panels. Close to the Earth, they're able to produce a lot of power, but once we get to Jupiter, it will only produce a few hundred watts. Nevertheless, the process is ongoing. This is a very exciting moment for us. If it all works out, if the two panels successfully completely deploy, we will have a mission ready to fly to Jupiter. We will still need to do a lot of work to configure the satellite for cruise and to configure the satellite for the commissioning phase that comes afterwards. That is the phase where we test all the equipment to make sure that everything is still fully functioning. But I keep hearing my colleagues saying that switches keep registering the panels unfolding. So everything is going quite nominally at this point. It will take a few more minutes. I think we're almost ready. The wing on the right side also started to deploy nominally, and some of the switches already indicating that they are in the deployed position. As the power increases steadily, it will not increase non-stop. At one point, it will reach the limit of power that the spacecraft is able to consume, and it will not produce more than that. It automatically regulates itself only to produce as much as the satellite needs, although at this distance from the sun, it is able to produce a lot more. The batteries are already being recharged, so there is already an excess of power coming from the solar rays that allows us to refill the batteries. I recall you that the satellite has been working on batteries ever since a few minutes before the actual launch of Ariane 5. We went to internal power, and the spacecraft has been using its internal batteries to keep everything up and running. Now it's moving on to the solar rays, it's producing its own energy, and it's able to refill the batteries. Confirmation -Y, that's the right side of the spacecraft, -Y wing has just also completely deployed at microswitch level. So this is a good sign.
We have successful deployment of the solar arrays. We have a mission. We are flying to Jupiter. We go there fully loaded with questions. Europe is getting there, Jupiter. Get ready for it.
I hope you just heard Andrea Komatsu announcing on the briefing loop that Europe has a mission. We are on our way to Jupiter. We have power. Both solar arrays are fully deployed. The satellite is fully functioning. After a little scare coming late to talk to us, the satellite is finally there. And what a beauty, what a beauty. What a great satellite, what a great mission. Congratulations to everybody involved. congratulations to the rocket, to the teams on the ground, to the teams here at ESOC that are now taking control. I will hand it back to you, Matt. There is not much to say. We have a fantastic mission ongoing, and what a pleasure it has been to share this moment with you.
Yeah, absolutely. The early tense has made this all the better. I mean, I've got a little party going on in my room. So, yeah. So I want to remind. I mean, it's just how brilliant is this? I want to remind our watchers that they can also participate in this amazing day. Simply use the hashtag Ask ESA on social media, and we'll try and get your questions answered. We have one actually coming in from Twitter, which is how is JUICE able to explore Jupiter's moons in depth while it remains in orbit? It's a great question, and it's really good timing, because we've got Rosario Laurenti, who is a real scientist working in the JUICE Science Operations Centre. Hello, Rosario.
Hi, Matt.
So before we get to that question, actually, of you know, how is it able to do it, let's talk about this 8-year journey, because this is something else that's been coming up on Twitter quite a lot, is people asking, you know, what are the scientists going to be doing in this 8-year journey? And I'm assuming you're not just going to be sitting around drinking coffee. So, yeah. what are you going to be doing in this 8-year stretch?
Yeah, you are right. Yes, this is just the starting point, but we have to be prepared and to prepare the instruments to be sure that they are ready when we arrive to Jupiter. And one of the things we will be doing is to prepare all the scientific operations we will be running when touring around Jupiter. Why is this so important? We know already that these operations will be really, really intense. And we know that we have to do the best of every opportunity. We'll have to look at Jupiter, to look at its moons, its rings, its magnetosphere, every character in this super scenario. And we know that we are flying one of the most powerful payloads to be flown already to the outer solar system. And for us, it's like organizing a super orchestra and trying to play a great symphony with the best instruments, the best players. And you know, this is impossible without a rehearsal, without a script. So for us, our symphony is the science return of the mission, and we have to make the most of it. And
I'm actually being told that there's an announcement, so I'm just going to pause you just for a second before we get on to the answer for the next Twitter one. There's an announcement from Kourou, so we're going to go over to Kourou now. So Lisa, are you over there in Kourou?
Much, Matt. And yes, we are here, and I'm here with ESA DG, Josef Aschbacher. My goodness, how are you feeling right now?
Oh my God, how do I feel? I feel very relieved. It's just, but I also feel very proud for Europe and for everyone who has contributed to this mission. And let me really say a thank you to all the people who have made this possible. This goes all the way back to member states making a decision that we are having such a mission, the scientists who have conceived the mission and dreamed of the impossible, to go to Jupiter and really find out, is there a moon that could be habitable? And this is a question which, of course, we are all asking ourselves, and now conceiving a mission that can measure these parameters. And then, of course, the project teams, the industry, all the companies, all the partners, all the institutions who have contributed instruments. I'm so grateful, and I really would like to thank them from the bottom of my heart, but also to say you can really be so proud of having this achieved. Let me also add a word of thank you to our international partners. NASA is a very strong partner of ESA and of Europe. We have many cooperations, and this is one of them, where NASA has provided one instrument in particular, but also our partners in Japan. JAXA has provided components to the instruments. The Israel Space Agency has provided components. So really, this is an international partnership, but I think it's also a moment of pride for Europe. And I really, on behalf of all these teams, would like to thank everyone who has made this possible. And I'm just relieved and just so happy.
Well, it's a delight to see your face and everyone else's face here today. It's a wonderful, wonderful, warm feeling here inside Jupiter. And well, thank you very much, Josef. And I hope I hope the rest of the mission goes as well as the
Yes, we all hope, of course. I mean, there's still steps to undertake. We are in a celebratory mood, and I think we have good reasons because we had acquisition of signal. Now the solar panels are opening. Of course, I have to remind everyone there's still a long way to go, and we have to test all the instruments, make sure that they function as expected, and then, of course, arrive in Jupiter, measure the moons, do all the trajectories to get there. So there's still a lot of work to be done, but the most critical one, which is the launch, the separation, the acquisition of signal, all this has happened, and for this I think we have really done a very big step towards Jupiter.
Huge thank you to you. Thank you, Joseph. And so, well, that is it from us here in Jupiter in Kourou. Raphael and me are going to say a huge thank you to all the teams here. You don't see them, but my goodness, they have been working so hard to bring you this show. So we're delighted to have been part of it. Thanks to everyone. Thanks for watching. And Raphael, last word?
Well, congratulations to my wonderful colleagues and all the teams involved in this mission. What an incredible mission.
And we're going to hand back to ESOC, and they're going to, I think they have a surprise for you, but that may be later on. We're going to hand back to them for now, over in Darmstadt. Thanks for everything.
Thanks very much, Lisa. Yeah, how amazing. Congratulations to all those teams, and well done, Ariane 5, for delivering this payload, special payload into space. What an amazing moment. For those who just joined us, I'm actually in Germany, where they actually fly these spacecraft and out to Jupiter. And I'm with Rosario, and we were just getting onto a Twitter question, which was, how is JUICE going to be able to explore the moons in depth when it's out at, once it's in orbit around Jupiter?
Yeah. Well, a funny way to look at this is to imagine JUICE as a 6-ton beast, and the instruments as the senses of this beast, and the way it perceives the world, and in particular the Jovian moons. For example, the eyes of this beast will be the remote sensing instruments that will be watching at the surface and the atmospheres of the moons and see which is their composition and the processes that are going on there. Also, when we will be close to the moons, the probe will wear special goggles to see the surface in 3D, to see the geology of the surface, and also to penetrate a few kilometers and see how these first layers look like. Does it mean that we cannot go farther inside and see the structure inside the moon? For this, we have the in situ instruments that will be continuously smelling and tasting the environment, touching the plasma, the particles, and feeling the magnetic field and the radiation around the probe. So everything together, also together with the way the probe is feeling its weight with respect to the gravitational pull it receives from the moon, everything together will allow us to understand the internal structure of the moons, and among other things, to know why there are and why and how and where the oceans of liquid water are, and if they are habitable.
Yeah, I mean, it's when you described it as an orchestra and getting ready, it actually sounds more like that you have to be an orchestral musician and a ballet dancer at the same time.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Yeah,
so you've got all these science objectives. So how do you do? As a scientist, do you deal with all the expectations, and how does the spacecraft itself deal with all those expectations and this huge orchestral complex piece that it has to play when it gets out there?
Yeah. Well, we think that the hardest part of this orchestra is to jungle between what we want and what we can. So on one side, we have our dream of unveiling some of the secrets of Jupiter, and all the instruments want to play at the same time and as long as possible, because every single bit of data is important for the science return. But on the other hand, the spacecraft imposes us strong constraints, and this is because we have constraints on power and on data generation. why is this? Because we are at Jupiter, and this means that we are very far away from the sun. And even if we have these huge solar panels that could power up several houses on Earth, they can only power up something similar to a microwave at Jupiter distances. So, you know, sometimes we have to choose among the instruments that can be switched on at the same time. On the other hand, being at Jupiter means that we are very far away from the Earth also, and this means that the data transfer is very slow. For example, if we had a 2-hour film on board JUICE, it will take several days to be transferred to the Earth. So all in all, a lot of constraints that forces us to lighten the instrument operations and to choose to trade off and to make hard decisions, but always trying to preserve the scientific objectives.
Yeah, it's hugely complicated.
Yeah.
I mean, so that's why you need this 8 years.
Yeah.
It's actually quite convenient that you've got all this planning time. Yeah.
It will be short at the end.
Yes, I know. It's like anything, isn't it? You think, oh, 8 years, I've got ages.
No. It's right there.
So, yeah, what are the plans for, you know, all this data coming back to Earth? Presumably people are going to be poring over this for years. What are the plans for the data when it gets back?
Yeah. Once the data are here, the instrument teams are the ones that know how to cook them to be usable for the scientists. So they will cook the data, they will be stored in an archive, and then they will be shared among the whole community to be exploited for the years to come, as you said, and who knows, to inspire new missions to revisit this incredible
mission
world.
Yeah. I mean, it's one thing that it really strikes me that these things take a long time to develop. We heard from Frederick, take a long time to develop, and then it takes a long time to get there, and then it takes a long time to actually process the data. For some scientists, this is a life's work, isn't it?
A lifetime work, yes.
So do you think there will be a JUICE moment? Do you think you'll have a moment where you go, oh, this is amazing?
Well, who knows? Yeah. We had, or there was the Galileo moment when, as Anesina was saying, Galileo discovered Jupiter's moons. We can think about a second Galileo moment when the Galileo probe showed that these worlds are not as cold and as dead and as inhospitable as it was thought before. And this changed completely our understanding of the universe and the way we search for life beyond the Earth. And who knows if we will have a JUICE moment that will also change completely our understanding of the solar system. So let's hope for the best.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, Rosario, for giving us all that information about JUICE. It's what an incredible mission. For those who are just joining us, you can ask more questions of more of our guests, and we'll try and get them answered. Right now, we've got a video to show something about the teams that are involved here at ESOC, and we're going to have a special guest straight after that to talk about that. So hopefully we've got a video now of the teams in ESOC.